If anyone had told me that my parents' disappointment would echo louder than the slam of a courtroom door, I might have believed them. But nothing prepares you for the moment your own mom and dad roll their eyes when you walk into the place where you're fighting for your life. The case wasn't about guilt or innocence, not really. It was about power. About a corporation that thought destroying a small-town girl like me was as easy as brushing lint off a sleeve. And about the two people who should have stood beside me but chose to sit behind the opposing counsel as if they had front-row seats to a show they already knew the ending of. When I entered the courtroom, my mother looked away sharply, as though my presence was an embarrassment she couldn't afford. My father exhaled like he'd warned me not to cause problems, like my attempt to seek justice was a childish tantrum. Their message was clear. Here she goes again. But the judge, he didn't look away. He watched me walk down that aisle in my thrift store blazer and second-hand heels like I was someone who mattered. Someone who wasn't supposed to break under the weight of corporate lawyers and parental judgment. Ms. Hale, he said, I've read through your evidence. All of it. And then silence, the kind that makes your pulse thump behind your ears, the kind that makes powerful people nervous. He cleared his throat. This is not the case the defense described. This is much, much bigger. The defense attorney shifted uncomfortably. My parents finally looked up, confusion tugging at their expressions. Maybe for the first time, they wondered if their daughter wasn't the screw-up they'd assumed. I didn't tremble. I didn't blink. For months, they had laughed when I told them the company was covering up injuries, manipulating data, and forcing low-income workers into unsafe conditions. They said I was exaggerating, being dramatic, trying to pick a fight with the world. But the world was finally listening. The judge asked me to step forward. Ms. Hale, he said again, slower this time, what you uncovered could affect thousands of people. Why didn't you come to the authorities sooner? I inhaled, feeling every bruise of the past year, the betrayal, the fear, the loneliness, but also the quiet rage that kept me standing. I did, I answered. No one cared. Not until now. Behind me, I heard my father's soft gasp. My mother's whisper. The eye-rolling was over, and the real fight had just begun. Part 1 was the shock. Part 2 was the storm. The next hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later, and by then, my story had hit every local news station from Boston to Charlotte. Reporters waited outside the courthouse like they were covering a celebrity scandal, and every time someone shouted my name, my parents flinched. Suddenly, I wasn't their embarrassing daughter anymore. I was the whistleblower. But the revenge I wanted wasn't fame. It wasn't headlines or pity or apologies whispered through clenched teeth. It was truth. It was accountability. It was justice for the people whose voices had been ignored long before mine. Inside the courtroom, the corporation's lawyers came loaded. They brought binders, financial experts, digital analysts, paid witnesses, everything money could buy. They thought they'd crush me under the weight of their preparation. What they didn't know was that I didn't come alone this time. Half the workers from the warehouse had shown up. The man who lost 2 fingers in a machine they refused to fix. The mother who miscarried after toxic exposure. The teenage boy who worked double shifts to keep his family afloat. They filled the benches with more courage than any briefcase in that room, and when the judge entered, he didn't look at the defense, he looked at us. The attorneys tried to twist my words, calling me emotional, disgruntled, confused. My parents shrank in their seats, as if the shame of once doubting me was catching up fast, but then the judge held up my evidence. A USB drive wrapped in clear plastic. This, he said, is the most detailed pattern of corporate malpractice I have seen in 10 years. The room froze. The defense tried to object, but the judge shut them down with a single glare. Your client will answer for this. My parents stared at me, no longer with eye rolls, but with something else. Maybe. Fear, definitely. And a dawning realization that the daughter they dismissed had just brought down an empire. When the verdict finally landed, it wasn't quiet. Gasps erupted, people cried, the defense buried their faces in their palms, and reporters sprinted out of the room to blast the breaking news. The judge stood, looked me dead in the eye, and said, Ms. Hale, you changed the course of this case. And possibly the country. My parents rushed toward me as cameras flashed. But I didn't stop for them. I walked out of the courtroom with the workers beside me, the people who had believed in me when my own family didn't. Revenge wasn't about destroying my parents or humiliating them. It was about proving that even the smallest voice can bring giants to their knees, and I had done exactly that.